Texas Tech football is just 3 weeks away, and scrimmage number 1 just took place this weekend for the Red Raiders. We'll recap that and discuss Joey McGuire's press conference and some of the players he said stood out for the Red Raiders in that scrimmage. But before we do that, join one of the fastest growing Big 12 and Texas Tech communities here on YouTube by simply pressing that subscribe button. Again, just 3 weeks away from Texas Tech football and Big 12 football ramping up. We've got you covered all year round right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel. All right, let's jump into this scrimmage number 1 recap. Joey McGuire met with the local media out in the 806 to discuss numerous things in terms of standouts, what position groups looked better than others, and could there be a potential breakout wide receiver for the Red Raiders in terms of a guy that maybe could do it all in terms of the position group? But let's jump into this in terms of what stood out from Joey McGuire. And first and foremost, let's start with the returners. Okay, he mentioned this, that the punt returner will be Myles Price, with Jordan Brown pushing him in terms of being on the 2 deep right there for the primary punt returner for the Red Raiders. When it comes to the kickoff, you can insert Jordan Brown there alongside, new Texas Tech wide receiver and speedy one at that, and Dre McCray. Both of them have added a little bit of weight. He mentioned about 10 to 12 pounds for each of them, and it's a substantial difference for Jordan Brown as he came in at around 180. He's now closer to 190, 192 for the Red Raiders, right? Moving into the guys that are injured right now, and you can see them at the bottom of the screen if you miss any. We got Steve Linton, who's got a thumb injury. Joe McGuire said he will be back for the Tuesday practice. The Red Raiders are doing a walkthrough today at the time of this recording, Sunday, August 13th, 2023, but we'll have a day off on Monday and then ramp things back up for their week of practice on Tuesday. Unfortunately, Coy Aiken, there were some rumors going around on Texas Tech Twitter and social media in general that something had happened to Coy Aiken, and indeed it was a collarbone. He was in a sling coming out for practice late in the week. He will be back for Texas Tech for either the Tarleton or West Virginia game, according to Joey McGuire. Now, Malik Dunlap, one of the super seniors on the outside of the secondary for Texas Tech, will be back from injury, an ankle injury at that on Tuesday, alongside Steve Linton. And then Nehemiah Martinez, a scary one here, had an eye injury. Didn't have to have surgery or anything. There were some rumors going around that Joey McGuire saw on social media that were saying, hey, like there's an orbital fracture, all this stuff. No, he'll be fine. He says he hopes to have him out there for Wyoming and probably expects that as well. Then the last injury is Ty Buchanan. He had a calf injury. He hasn't really practiced at all during fall camp yet, but he is expected to ramp things up starting Tuesday or Wednesday for the Red Raiders. So some good news for Texas Tech on that front. When it comes to position groups that stood out and ones that he wanted to discuss, Joey McGuire, you got to start with the wide receivers. And we've already mentioned this guy's name once, but it's Jordan Brown. He is the guy that really stood out. Joey McGuire said that he had 2 or 3 touchdowns in the scrimmage, made a ridiculous deep catch on a throw from Baron Morton, did Joey McGuire say. And he's playing behind Loic, but he's pushing Loic for that outside wide receiver 2 spot. Loic will probably be the starter, but it's good to have a chess piece and a football junkie like Jordan Brown. That's how Joey McGuire described him, as that wide receiver 2. And if you remember, Jordan Brown, the Kansas transfer, he can move around a little bit, kind of be used as a chess piece. And he's really versatile on special teams as well. So going to be interesting to see how they use him as well. Joey McGuire did mention that Myles Price can bring different things to the table as well. I think everybody knew that, but he did specify during the press conference that, hey, he has made it a point of emphasis to Zach to kind of use Myles in different formations and use him at different spots in those formations, whether that's in the slot, in the backfield, outside, inside, whatever it may be. So look for Myles Price to kind of be used as, I don't want to say a gadget guy because that has a negative connotation to a lot of people, but more as a Swiss Army knife type dude. And him and Nehemiah, once Nehemiah gets back and healthy, they could be moved around quite a bit to create havoc for the opposing defense. When he was talking about wide receivers as well, he mentioned the young guys in Crest, West, and others in terms of their skill set. They were getting a little bit of run in scrimmage number 1. So it's good to see some of those guys. And he also mentioned, not even specifically for the wide receivers, but for other players on the team. And he brought up Brady Boyd, who can play every position as well, who had a really good scrimmage. He mentioned that those guys could be redshirted in a unique way. He brought up Petrie from Baylor and how Matt Rule kind of used those games that he can use in terms of keeping the red shirt, which again, you can only play a limited amount of games for a red shirt in order to keep it, I should say. They may finagle some of those and pair some of those wide receivers together where these guys will play against Oklahoma State or whoever it may be, right? Like in terms of what's going down, right? Like these guys may play at BYU. Then he may miss a couple of games and then they'll play him against UCF, whatever it may be, right? They're going to pick and choose when to use these guys for the betterment of the team. He moved on to talk about the offensive line, and he said, today was a huge step for us. He said, I'm smiling because I was messing with Shuck, saying, you don't know what to do with all this time, do you? He mentioned both Shuck and Morton had plenty of time, regardless of if it was against the ones or the twos, which is a good sign. And I know that there's some people that'll probably say, oh, my goodness, I'm worried about the defensive line. No, you got to think about it. Now these guys are better, more improved in terms of the offensive line. You get an All-American type guy in Cole Spencer. Rusty Stats is a pretty damn good center. You move Monroe Mills to his traditional position on the left side. Caleb Rogers now on the right. Not to mention you shift Dennis Wilburn into right guard, and you've got a plethora of guys in terms of depth on the offensive line for Texas Tech. So now you're looking and you feel a little bit better about the depth that you have, but your starters as well, just from the standpoint their experience, they know how to play in a Zach Kittley offense, and they're meshing really, really well together. So that's something that stands out. He also said this to Tim DeRuyter: I'm trying to blow the whistle for a sack, but they aren't even close at this point. Talk about a testament of iron sharpens iron for Texas Tech, not only on the defensive line, but for the offensive line as well. Speaking of the defensive line, he brought up a couple of guys in terms of the depth behind the two main guys in Hutchings and Bradford for the Red Raiders. He brought up Ledette, he brought up Banks, Burris, and McAlpine as well. He mentioned that Blake Burris is having a great camp. When they have these metrics where it's called load, player load, right? And that just basically describes how hard these guys are going at practice. He said that Blake Burris has won that every day except for one in fall camp for the defensive line. And that's a really good sign for Texas Tech from the standpoint of this. They have 5 or 6 guys now that they can rotate just on the interior of the defensive line. And that's something that really Texas Tech has struggled with for a long time in terms of just having impactful depth and not solely relying on maybe 2 or 3 guys on that D-line, specifically the interior. When it comes to the secondary, Joey McGuire said, really, they just need to play together more. And this is a group that is very experienced. You think about the guys that are projected to start for Texas Tech, and there's only one guy that's not a senior, and that's new star position, CJ Baskerville, the San Diego State transfer. You think about it, just going from this side, you got Malik Dunlap, then you've got the star position in CJ Baskerville, then you've got Tyler Owens, then you've got Rabbit, and then you've got Rashad Williams, right? And so when you look at everything in terms of what's going on for this secondary, you have that experience, but now you've got guys like Peoples getting a lot of run out there in terms of that opposite corner spot of Rashad Williams since Malik Dunlap was missing time. There's a lot of young guys in that secondary as well on the 2 deep that are going to be playing significant snaps potentially for the Red Raiders. The good thing is a lot of them are versatile when it comes down to it. They can play on the outside, inside. They can go down into the box. They can play the center field type position. But he mentioned that, hey, they just need to communicate a little bit better. But that will come with playing more, getting more reps in practice. But he really likes the experience that Texas Tech has in that secondary. And for me, just from my personal preference, I think they'll be all right. Again, reps are a necessary thing really in any walk of life, in any profession, right? They did mention this in terms of the top 25, and I've got the teams down there at the bottom in terms of the USA Today preseason poll for the Big 12 and where Texas Tech ranks in that. Joey McGuire was asked about it. It's a whole new year, but there's going to be some teams in the top 25 that we beat last year. So if they're in the top 25, I think we should be as well. He did mention that it is a testament to the people in the building that he has not heard one word mentioned about where they are ranked in the USA Today poll or the AP poll. And if that matters or not, they are squarely focused on themselves and what's going on in the building, as well as Wyoming. Week number 1, they are taking it 1 week at a time. And I think that comes back to the experience factor for the Red Raiders and how old they are. Again, when you look at Texas Tech right now in the projected starting 22, so offense and defense, there are only going to be 4 players that are not seniors. Okay. And there's only going to be one underclassman, and that's your wide receiver one in Jerron Bradley. Just a testament to the experience and how much veteran leadership this team has for the Red Raiders going in to 2023. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to stay updated on Texas Tech football and the Big 12 all year long. Again, we're going to be giving you plenty of videos during the week. I think this past week we gave you 7 videos, so a video for every day. Nobody else is doing that on YouTube and keeping you in the know when it comes to Texas Tech athletics and Big 12, whether that's realignment, expansion, and everything in between. We've got you covered right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.